You ever meet someone so entitled they think they can evict a chicken like it's a tenant? Because that's exactly what I dealt with the first week I brought Daisy home. Daisy wasn't loud, wasn't messy, wasn't bothering a soul. She was this calm, fluffy little emotional support chicken who followed me around like a dog with feathers. I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, she'd peck around the yard, minding her business, living her best chicken life. Real peaceful vibe. And then Karen showed up, and of course she did. I swear I didn't even hear her walk up. One second I'm chilling, the next second there's this blonde woman in a pink suit standing at the edge of my yard like she was inspecting a crime scene. Her posture alone screamed HOA royalty. She had that I run everything within 5 miles energy, chin lifted, hands on hips, like she was about to shut down a restaurant for failing a surprise inspection. Before I could even say hi, she pointed at Daisy like she'd spotted a wild bear. Livestock isn't permitted in this community, she snapped, like the words burned her tongue. I told her Daisy wasn't livestock. I told her she was an emotional support animal with full legal documentation. I even kept my voice calm, which honestly should have earned me an award because Karen already looked like she wanted to toss me in HOA jail. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought she'd pass out. Chickens don't qualify, she said, waving her hand like she was swatting away facts. We can't have barnyard animals lowering property values. I almost laughed. Daisy was literally just standing there, staring at Karen like, "Lady, what is wrong with you?" But Karen acted like Daisy was plotting a coup. I tried to explain the law again, even offered to show her the paperwork, but she cut me off with this little scoff. "I don't need to see anything," she said. "I'm on the HOA board. I know the rules." That line right there told me everything I needed to know about her. She wasn't enforcing rules, she was the rules, at least in her own mind. She had that classic power trip tone, the kind that usually ends in someone filing a complaint or screaming at a Starbucks barista. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice like she wanted to sound intimidating. "Get rid of the chicken," she said, "or the HOA will handle it." Then she spun around and marched off, heels clicking like a metronome of entitlement. I watched her go, Daisy clucked, and honestly I wasn't even mad, just stunned at the level of drama she managed to pack into a 60-second conversation. But here's the thing Karen didn't know. I'd done my homework long before adopting Daisy. I had regulations printed, highlighted, and legally backed. Emotional support animals were fully protected. My girl Daisy had more rights than Karen thought. Karen thought she scared me. She didn't realize the paperwork in my drawer would nuke her whole plan. Ever get a violation notice so stupid you think it's a prank? Because when I opened my front door that morning, I genuinely thought someone was messing with me. Right there, slapped dead center on my door like some kind of HOA ransom note, was a bright pink piece of paper screaming eviction order, public safety hazard in bold letters. For a second, I thought maybe Karen got bored and started doing arts and crafts. But nope, it was official HOA stationery, signed by 3 board members who probably didn't even know their names were being used. I pulled it off the door and read it twice because the wording was so ridiculous it felt like satire. According to this order, Daisy was a biosecurity threat capable of infecting the neighborhood and causing panic. Panic. From a chicken who spent her mornings sunbathing next to my porch steps. They also referenced Rule 14b, which didn't exist. I knew the handbook pretty well, partly because I wanted to avoid problems, partly because Karen always looked one tantrum away from weaponizing it. As I stood there holding the neon disaster, my neighbor Mark walked by with his dog and just shook his head. "Dude, Karen made them send that," he muttered. "She cornered half the board in her driveway last night. Said it was an emergency vote. An emergency vote. Over a chicken." Meanwhile, this same HOA ignored an actual pothole that could swallow a Prius. But sure, Daisy was the crisis. Another neighbor, Jen, texted me a screenshot of the HOA group chat where Karen was practically foaming at the mouth about rogue livestock and immediate action for community safety. You'd think Daisy was setting off explosives, not digging for bugs. Word spread fast that Karen had fired off emails at midnight, demanding the board protect the neighborhood from my tiny feathered friend. Some people laughed at her. Others seemed scared to challenge her, which said a lot about how she ran things. The funniest part? They used language straight out of a sci-fi movie. Potential pathogen carrier. High-risk avian specimen. It sounded like they Googled scary chicken words and threw them together. I knew instantly that this wasn't a board decision. This was a Karen special, fully homemade, sprinkled with delusion, wrapped in entitlement, and delivered with that pink suit vengeance she was famous for. But the board didn't know one little detail, one tiny thing that would have saved them the embarrassment. They didn't know I had my porch camera angled perfectly toward Karen's yard. And that porch camera happened to record her entire emergency meeting. Her snapping her fingers at board members, barking orders, threatening to rewrite the handbook herself, and announcing she'd remove the chicken personally if they won't. They didn't know I recorded that emergency meeting. And the recording was pure gold. Funny how a single chicken can split a whole neighborhood like a civil war. And I'm not exaggerating, the moment that pink eviction notice hit my door, the whole block turned into a reality show nobody asked for. Half the neighborhood absolutely adored Daisy. They'd bring her little treats, wave at her when they walked by, even joke that she had more personality than most humans on our street. Kids loved her. Elderly folks loved her. Random joggers loved her. Daisy was basically a community celebrity. But the other half? Oh man. They weren't against Daisy, they were just terrified of Karen. You could see it in their faces. Anytime Karen marched around in her pink suit, shoulders stiff, blonde hair bouncing like she was storming a castle, people folded instantly. They'd nod, agree and pretend to care about safety concerns, just because standing up to her felt like a death sentence. Karen wasn't just a board member, she was the board, the sheriff and the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. Soon enough people started whispering. Not privately, publicly. In driveways. In the Facebook group. Even at the mailbox. Is the chicken really a problem? Karen's gone off the rails this time. I mean, it's just a chicken, right? And the best part? Someone, I still don't know who, created a meme page called Karen vs. Chicken, Dawn of Cluckstice. It blew up overnight. People posted fake movie posters, fight cards, slow-motion videos of Daisy walking with dramatic music. My favorite was a picture of Daisy with sunglasses photoshopped on, captioned, "The only biohazard here is Karen's attitude." Of course Karen hated it. She tried to shut down the group, demanded Facebook remove it, and claimed it was digital harassment. But the internet did what the internet does, it made everything 10 times worse. Every time Karen posted something dramatic, someone made a meme out of it. Every time she scolded someone in the HOA chat, screenshots went public. The drama had leaked outside the neighborhood and people in the next town over were sharing it like it was the Super Bowl. Suddenly my yard became the battleground. Some folks would stop by to check on Daisy like she was a patient in a hospital. Others would hurry past, eyes down, not wanting to be seen by Karen's invisible security cameras she swore she had. A few even suggested I keep Daisy indoors for safety, as if Karen was going to rappel down from her roof and abduct her. One morning I walked outside and found someone had left a tiny armor costume on my porch. A full-on chicken-sized medieval suit of armor. I had to sit down because I couldn't breathe from laughing. That little gift told me the neighborhood was officially divided, and the battle lines were drawn. But here's the thing about chaos. The louder it gets, the more people start paying attention. And the more people paid attention, the more Karen's lies, forged rules and dramatic tantrums were exposed. She didn't know it yet, but the noise wasn't helping her. But the louder the drama got, the more attention it brought, and that's what doomed Karen. You ever see someone abuse power so hard it becomes comedy? Because the day Karen marched onto my property dressed like she was about to handle nuclear waste, I realized she'd officially left reality and entered her own HOA-themed fantasy world. I was inside making lunch when I heard Daisy cluck in this confused, offended tone she only used when something truly stupid was happening. I stepped outside and there she was. Karen. Pink suit. Blonde hair. Clipboard clutched like a weapon. And now she had on safety goggles, latex gloves, and a disposable lab coat like she was starring in some off-brand medical drama. She didn't even look at me. She walked straight past, mumbling to herself, scribbling notes like she was tracking a dangerous predator. Karen, what are you doing? I asked. She held up one finger, the universal sign for, I'm important and you're not, then dramatically pointed the clipboard at Daisy. That chicken, she said, voice quivering with fake authority, is a high-risk avian specimen. She may be carrying airborne toxins. Airborne toxins. Daisy. The same chicken who earlier was dust bathing in my flower bed and fell asleep mid-peck. I looked at Daisy. Daisy looked at me. Karen looked like she was auditioning for a job at the CDC. Before I could even respond, Karen whipped out a roll of yellow caution tape, the kind you see at crime scenes, and started wrapping it around my mailbox, my porch railing, even the tree in my yard. I swear she would have taped the sky if she could reach it. You're trespassing, I said because someone had to inject reality into the situation. I'm conducting an emergency biohazard assessment, she snapped, tightening the tape so aggressively she almost tripped over it. As acting HOA enforcement supervisor, I have the authority. She didn't. Not even close. There isn't a position called HOA Enforcement Supervisor. Karen made it up like a kid making up rules in a playground game. By now, 2 of her board members, Jim and Lila, were standing on the sidewalk watching, looking like they wanted to melt into the pavement. Jim cleared his throat and said, "Karen, maybe we should, wait for actual animal control?" But Karen ignored him completely, adjusting her goggles like she was preparing for a toxic spill. Daisy wandered toward her, curious. Karen shrieked, jumped back and held the clipboard in front of her like a shield. "Stay back. That's how transmission happens." Transmission of what? Chicken vibes? When she tried to staple a quarantine order to my fence. Yes, she brought a stapler. I finally stepped between her and the railing. "You can't do this," I said. "You're violating." But I didn't need to finish. She did it all on her own. She trespassed. She attempted an unauthorized quarantine. And she impersonated a regulatory official by claiming she had enforcement authority. 3 state laws. Violated in under 10 minutes. That had to be a record. Her little performance would have ended there, if she didn't accidentally violate 3 state laws in the process. There's nothing sweeter than beating an HOA with their own rulebook. And trust me, I was about to serve Karen a legal sandwich so thick she'd choke on the first bite. After her little quarantine cosplay meltdown, I realized she wasn't slowing down, she was escalating. So I did what any calm, slightly annoyed, paperwork-loving homeowner would do. I gathered every receipt, record, screenshot, and legal document I had and built a case so tight it squeaked. First thing I pulled was Daisy's ESA certification. Not the sketchy online kind Karen claimed didn't count, but the real, legally recognized documentation signed by a licensed mental health professional. Then I printed out the federal housing guidelines that clearly state HOAs can't discriminate against emotional support animals. Highlighted, labeled, cross-referenced. Basically Karen's worst nightmare. Facts she couldn't argue with. Next, I dug into the local zoning codes. I had already checked them before getting Daisy, but now I pulled the full PDFs, scanned the fine print, and printed the parts that specifically said, very plainly, that small domesticated birds kept as emotional support animals were not classified as livestock. I even color-coded everything so the HOA couldn't pretend they were confused. Karen loves acting like confusion is a legal defense. Then came my favorite part, the timeline of Karen's harassment. Oh, I documented everything. Every conversation. Every violation notice. The video of her trying to quarantine my lawn like she was handling radioactive chickens. The audio clip of her telling board members she'd rewrite the HOA handbook to get rid of Daisy. The porch cam footage of her midnight emergency meeting. All time-stamped. All organized. All sitting in neat little folders like they were waiting to testify. By the time I was done, I had a full 32-page packet. My lawyer took one look at it and said, "Yeah, this is gonna hurt them." He formatted it, added the legal citations, and sent the whole thing directly to the HOA board with a subject line so cold it could frost glass. Notice of formal complaint and pending action. Within 20 minutes, the email thread lit up. You could practically smell the panic coming through the screen. Board members suddenly remembered they had nothing to do with the violation notice. One claimed he never approved the emergency vote. Another said she didn't realize Karen had forged policy memos. The HOA president wrote a 5-sentence panic paragraph apologizing for the miscommunication, which was corporate speak for, "We're screwed and we know it." But the best part? Karen replied last. She tried to bluff. Tried to act confident. Tried to argue the rules, claim community safety, pretend she had authority. But her tone was shaky. You could see the cracks forming. What she didn't know, what made this whole thing even better, was that my lawyer didn't just send that packet to the HOA. He also CC'd the state agriculture and animal welfare department. They'd been quietly watching Karen ever since the biohazard stunt went viral. Karen still thought she could bluff her way through it. She had no clue the state was already watching. Karen can scream at neighbors, but she can't scream at the state. And that truth hit her like a brick the morning a white state vehicle rolled into our neighborhood. Not a cop car. Not animal control. State agriculture and animal welfare investigator. The kind of guy whose badge actually means something. The kind of guy who doesn't give a single damn about HOA drama, power trips, or pink suits. He stepped out of the truck wearing a button-down, boots, and the calm look of a man who's dealt with way bigger problems than Karen. Clipboard in hand. Sunglasses on. Zero patience for nonsense. I liked him immediately. He walked up to my porch and introduced himself, real professional, then told me something that made my jaw drop. Multiple neighbors had filed harassment complaints about Karen, not even about Daisy, but about how she screamed at them, threatened fines, and tried to make them sign biohazard witness statements. I didn't even know that was a thing. Spoiler, it's not. I'm here to verify the complaint and review the documentation, he said. I handed him the packet my lawyer prepared. He flipped through it slowly, nodding as he skimmed each page. Every once in a while he'd let out this quiet, that sounded like a man mentally preparing a courtroom takedown. Then he said the magic words, I need to speak with the party responsible for filing these HOA enforcement actions. Oh, Karen was about to have the worst day of her life. We didn't even have to go find her. She came stomping down the sidewalk the second she saw the state logo on his truck. She had her blonde hair pulled tight, her pink suit freshly ironed, and that I own this block walk turned up to full power. She didn't even say hello. You need to remove that chicken immediately, she barked. This is a health emergency and he's breaking HO. The investigator held up a hand. Ma'am, I'm here to evaluate your actions today. I swear the air temperature dropped. Karen froze, eyes wide, like she couldn't understand a universe where she wasn't the center of authority. He asked her for documentation supporting her claims. Karen, trying to salvage control, whipped out a stack of papers she clearly threw together in a rush. They were crumpled, misprinted, and filled with grammar mistakes. She spoke fast, tripping over her own lies, claiming Daisy was confirmed to be a viral threat, that the HOA conducted official emergency protocols, and that she had legal enforcement power. The investigator looked at her paperwork for maybe 3 seconds before saying, These aren't legal documents. And these signatures don't match the HOA file. Karen stuttered, tried to redirect, tried to point at Daisy like she was going to cough up anthrax right then and there. But the investigator wasn't buying it. He turned to me. Can I see the original documents you referenced? I handed him the real ones, certifications, timestamps, videos, everything. He reviewed them carefully, then asked Karen the question that ended her last ounce of confidence. Ma'am, can you explain why your memo includes phrases copy-pasted from a state health advisory that doesn't exist? And why 2 signatures appear to be forged? Her face drained like an unplugged fridge. I've never seen a person's soul leave their body so fast. And the investigation hadn't even officially started yet. When he asked Karen to explain why she forged 2 HOA policy memos, her face drained like an unplugged fridge. If karma has a dress code, today it was a pink suit falling apart at the seams. And I mean that literally. Karen showed up looking like she'd ironed that suit with the fires of rage, but by the end of the day it was wrinkled, sweaty, and hanging off her like it wanted to resign too. The state investigator didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't even raise an eyebrow. He just laid out the facts one by one, calm and sharp, and each one hit Karen like a bowling ball to the ego. First he pulled out the forged memos. The signatures didn't match. The formatting didn't match. The rules Karen quoted weren't in any legal HOA handbook in the entire state. Watching her try to explain them was like watching someone juggle knives blindfolded, painful but impossible to look away from. She kept stuttering, saying things like, well, the intent was correct, and I was acting in the best interest of the neighborhood, which is liar language for, I made everything up and thought no one would check. Then came the emergency vote. The investigator asked the board members to confirm if the late-night meeting ever happened. They all looked at each other like kids caught cheating on a test. Jim admitted Karen pressured them. Lila said she thought it was informal. And the HOA president finally blurted out, we never voted. She told us not to question her authority. Not great. Not even HOA level great. But the moment that actually made one of the neighbors clap, yes clap, was when the investigator asked about the biohazard gear. The gloves. The goggles. The lab coat. The caution tape. All bought using the HOA emergency fund. Karen folded her arms like that somehow made it justified. That equipment was necessary for community safety, she said. The investigator raised one eyebrow. For a single chicken? Silence. Beautiful, delicious silence. The board members looked mortified. The neighbors walking by slowed down because they could feel the meltdown brewing. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to defend herself, but she was drowning and everyone could see it. She had built her identity on control, and now it was slipping through her fingers like sand. The investigator closed his clipboard. Given the falsified documents, misuse of HOA funds, unauthorized enforcement actions, and intimidation of residents, I recommend immediate removal from the HOA board. He didn't have to say it twice. The board voted her out on the spot. No discussion. No hesitation. It was like they'd been waiting years for someone with real authority to give them permission. The moment they announced her removal, neighbors started cheering. Someone honked their car horn. Someone else yelled, "Free at last." A couple kids ran down the street waving sidewalk chalk like victory flags. Karen looked around like she couldn't process that the crowd was celebrating her downfall. She stomped down the sidewalk, pink suit flapping behind her like a defeated parade float. But here's the thing, Karen wasn't done. Her pride wouldn't let her walk away quietly. So she did the one thing no one expected. She filed one last complaint. And that complaint blew up in her face publicly. You ever watch a Karen try to spin a lie while the whole community laughs? Because that's exactly what happened when Karen, fresh off getting booted from the HOA board, decided she wasn't going down without one last dramatic attempt to save face. She came up with this ridiculous story that Daisy, the calm, friendly chicken who barely even made a peep, had attacked her. Like, pecked her hard enough to warrant a full-on complaint. Honestly, it was laughable from the start, but Karen was dead serious. When the state investigator, who by now was well aware of Karen's antics, asked her to provide video evidence of this attack, I was already bracing myself for what would come next. The video she turned in didn't show anything like an attack. No. Instead, it captured Karen stomping around my yard, yelling at Daisy to get away, flailing her arms like she was trying to swat a swarm of invisible bees. Then, the moment that made the whole neighborhood lose it, Karen slipped on a wet patch near the garden hose, flailed like a cartoon character, and crashed hard onto the grass. The timing was perfect. Several neighbors had gathered nearby by that point, having heard the commotion, and someone shouted, "Play that again." The video replayed on a phone screen and the crowd burst out laughing. Karen's big claim of being attacked turned into an instant meme, with neighbors joking that Daisy was the safest animal on the block, clearly not the one to fear. Word spread fast. Social media posts, texts, even local neighborhood chats were buzzing about the Karen versus chicken saga, with Karen's failed claim topping every conversation. People made jokes about Karen's epic fall, and how Daisy was dangerous only to people with bad balance. Honestly, it felt like the entire neighborhood was rooting for Daisy more than any of us had expected. The HOA board didn't just dismiss Karen's complaint, they hit her where it hurt. They fined her for filing a false complaint and wasting community resources chasing a non-existent problem. The official HOA statement was clear. They apologized for the unnecessary drama caused by Karen's false accusations and thanked me and Daisy for our patience and calm during the whole mess. Then, in a move that perfectly capped off the story, the HOA created a new neighborhood tradition, Daisy Day. It became an annual event celebrating community pets and fostering neighborly goodwill. The first Daisy Day was a blast. Kids showed up wearing chicken hats, neighbors brought their dogs, cats, even turtles, and Daisy was the honored guest of the day, strutting around like she owned the block, which honestly she probably did. It was beautiful seeing the community come together after all the tension Karen had caused. What started as a petty HOA feud turned into a real neighborhood celebration. Daisy became a mascot, a symbol of sticking up for yourself, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices, in this case a backyard chicken, can bring down even the biggest bullies. And Karen? Well, she faded into the background, nowhere to be seen during Daisy Day or any neighborhood gatherings after. She tried to evict my chicken, but instead, my chicken helped evict her. The tables had flipped so completely, it was almost poetic. Knowing that Daisy's simple existence was what finally broke Karen's grip on the neighborhood? Man, that's a victory you can't beat.